Kill them all! The scream echoed through the village as the other tribe attacked. Nora had been sleeping under the canopy of trees when the chaos erupted. Her eyes flew open, her heart raced in her chest. She barely had a second to gather her thoughts before something hit her head. A sharp, stinging pain, and she realized someone had thrown a stone. Dazed, she tried to sit up, but the sounds of clashing weapons and terrified cries surrounded her. The village was under siege. Smoke filled the air, and flames licked at the wooden huts as her people fought back. But the attackers were too strong, too relentless. Nora's instincts kicked in, and she scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. She had no time to think, no time to wonder how everything fell apart so quickly. The only thought that filled her mind was survival. She had to escape. Her tribe, her family, was being slaughtered, and she was powerless to stop it. As she turned to run, she saw her mother, the tribe's healer, being cornered by one of the attackers. "Mother!" she screamed, but it was too late. The man's spear struck, and Nora's heart shattered. She bit down in her grief, knowing her mother would have told her to run, to live. With tears in her eyes and blood dripping down her forehead, Nora sprinted toward the dense forest. She could hear the footsteps of her enemies behind her, their shouts growing louder as they gave chase. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her body burning with the effort, but she wouldn't stop. She couldn't stop. The forest loomed ahead, its dark, tangled branches offering a shred of hope. She was the only one who knew these woods like the back of her hand, where to hide, where to climb, where to disappear. Nora's breath was quick and shallow as she bolted through the thick underbrush. Her feet seemed to glide over the forest floor, dodging roots and sharp thorns with ease. She could hear the voices of the attackers not far behind, but she knew this forest better than anyone. They were loud, crashing through the trees like they owned the place, but they didn't. This was her world. Suddenly, a sharp whistle of an arrow cut through the air, grazing past her ear. She ducked behind a cluster of ferns, pressing her body against the damp earth. Her pulse pounded in her ears, but she didn't panic. The forest was filled with places to hide. She'd learned that as a child, running from her father's wrath, and now it would save her life. One of the attackers, frustrated, shouted from behind, "Where did she go?" His voice was harsh, laced with anger. "She's fast," another one growled, "but she can't hide forever. We'll smoke her out if we have to." Nora bit her lip, knowing they wouldn't stop until they had her. She glanced around, spotting the thick vines hanging from a nearby tree. With a burst of speed, she leaped up, grabbing the vine and pulling herself into the canopy. Like a shadow, she disappeared into the trees. Down below, the attackers came into view. "You idiots! Spread out! She's not a spirit. She's just a girl," one of the leaders barked. "Maybe this forest is cursed," another muttered under his breath. "She moves too quickly, like a ghost." Nora crouched on a sturdy branch above them, watching their every move. They were disoriented, stumbling over roots, stepping into traps of their own making. They didn't belong here, not in her world. The leader of the group stopped, looking around suspiciously. He squinted up at the trees, but Nora was too well hidden, too silent. "She'll slip sooner or later, and when she does..." His words trailed off, but the threat hung in the air. Nora's mind raced. She had to keep moving. The forest might be her ally, but the attackers were relentless. She spotted a narrow stream nearby, its banks slick with mud. Perfect. Leaping from her branch, she landed gracefully on the bank, her feet barely making a sound. She started running again, But this time, she led them deeper into the forest's embrace, to where the terrain would work against them. The attackers followed, but as they reached the stream, they faltered. One slipped into the water with a loud splash. "This place is a nightmare," he cursed, scrambling to pull himself free from the mud. Nora smiled to herself. They were out of their element. She was not. Nora's breath hitched as she heard the snapping of twigs behind her. She had pushed her limits, running farther and faster than she ever had before. But they were closing in. She could feel it. "There she is!" the leader shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. Nora's legs burned as she tried to speed up, but exhaustion was catching up. Her heart pounded, not just from running, but from the painful memories clawing at her mind. The sight of her parents, lifeless on the ground, flashed before her eyes, fueling her desperation. But it was too late. Rough hands grabbed her arms, yanking her back. She screamed, thrashing wildly, but they were too many. The leader stepped in front of her, a cruel smirk on his face. "Enough of this chase, girl. You're not running anymore," he sneered. His eyes gleamed with malice, the same eyes that had watched her father die. "It's time you joined your family." Nora's voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. "You killed them! You killed my father!" She struggled against the grip of the men holding her, her voice rising in raw emotion. "Leave me alone. What do you want from me? You've taken everything." The leader's smile faded slightly, replaced with a cold, calculating look. "Everything? Not yet. You're still alive." He stepped closer, his face just inches from hers. "But we'll fix that." Nora's chest heaved with sobs, but the anger in her burned brighter. "My father fought for us, for this land. You had no right." The leader's eyes flickered with irritation. "Your father was a fool, just like the rest of your tribe. You think you can stop us? You think you're special because you know a few plants?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You'll die like the rest of them. No one cares about your tricks." Nora's fists clenched as the men dragged her forward. They were taking her back to the place where it all happened. The place where her family's blood had stained the earth. "No, let me go," she cried, her voice hoarse from yelling. She twisted and kicked, but it was useless. The men were stronger, and they had her tightly bound. They reached the clearing, and the stench of death still lingered in the air. Her parents' bodies had been taken, but the ground was scarred with the marks of the battle. Nora's heart shattered as she looked around, seeing the remnants of the life she once knew. "This is where you belong," the leader said, his voice taunting. "Right here with the rest of your kind." Nora's knees buckled, but they didn't let her fall. Her throat burned with the need to scream, to fight back, but all she could do was sob. The weight of her loss was crushing her, and now she was alone. "Kill her and be done with it,"